All right, everybody, welcome in to episode 70. Episode 70. We are 30 away from hitting that century mark here on the only sports podcast to talk about both American and Brazilian sports, two countries, two Americas, all sports. I'm Nicholas Hill, live as always from Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States. Joining me from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil is Gustavo Tomazeli. Gus, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's a chilly night here in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil. Plenty of sport, plenty of topics to get in. I mean, last week since had a great interview with Jason Longshore, we missed a couple of topics, but I think there's one big topic that we want to address. The last week when after record our show, we watched something that we thought was not gonna happen, but unfortunately, it did.
Yeah, I mean, I knew in the back of my head it could happen, but I mean, the way it went down was just unfortunate. Just unfortunately, more of the same of what we've seen. And it's not when you look at the loss that Tennessee took to FAU in the Sweet 16 last Thursday night. It's not that we couldn't shoot, and obviously we knew that our offense wasn't very good this year. I mean, you can look at the fact they were 6 of 29 from midcourt in this game. Just I I really want either Rick Barnes or somebody else to abolish the mid-range game for this team. We cannot shoot mid-range shots going forward. It's the least efficient type of shot because here's the deal. Even if you make the mid-range shot, it's still only 2 points, right? Either go to the rim or shoot freeze. Those are your most efficient shots. But that's not what lost us the game against Florida Atlantic. We've had other games where we've shot really bad and still won. Um, and it wasn't even our defense that failed in this game. We held them to 62 points. Florida Atlantic only shot 42%, which is not terrible, but it's not great. Here's where they lost. The Falls lost. They were out rebounded 40 to 36 by a team that was much smaller than them. And they gave up 12 offensive rebounds to Florida Atlantic Thursday night. That was unacceptable. That could not happen for Tennessee to win this basketball game. And unfortunately, they just were not able to close out on the rim, close out on the backboards. And it's just puzzling because this team was really good at rebounding all year. They were the best defensive team in the country all year. And yet that was their downfall. Ultimately, they could not keep Florida Atlantic off the boards. And eventually, when you let a team like FAU get enough rebounds, they're going to start making some of those second chance points. In this game, I believe they had something in the order of 15, 20 second chance points. And that was the difference, especially when we got down the stretch and we had no one that could sink a shot to save their life. It was so obvious this was how the season was going to end.
Yeah, that's a good point though. That game felt like it reminded me of the Purdue game, the even the Oregon State game. So many matchups that Tennessee, in theory, it was better, but it didn't have the it. We didn't have the it factor. You talk about rebounding, and rebounding it takes guts. It's all about the extra push. The FAU had it, and Tennessee didn't.
And
Uh,
it's just
oh,
so frustrating because we had it against Duke. We came out and we bullied Duke. And then it looks like we just lost our dog in 4 days. It's like we beat Duke and we thought we had made the Final Four, but you had to win 2 games. And I feel like we might have celebrated a bit prematurely
the Duke
with that
matchup
one.
is the kind of trickiest one because it was a big matchup, but it wasn't the matchup. The matchup was getting to the Elite Eight, something the Vols haven't made in almost 12 years.
Yep, and now we have to wait at least one more year for that to happen. I mean, I'll say this, I'm not completely surprised that it happened. I mean, we've played terrible the last month. Of course, we didn't have Zakai Ziegler, and it really showed in this game that we needed him. I mean, Jonte Davis was the best player on the court during the second half of that game, especially.
First half, I'll give a credit to Euro Splovic. He had a tremendous game. Even the Brazilian ESPN analysts were praising him, so he had a good half. But I feel like in the second half, most of the team disappeared. Olivier Comwa, that played incredibly against Duke, was nowhere to be found.
Yeah, I mean, what, 6 points in 26 minutes after a 27-point performance against Duke? Just, I mean, that. But this has been the thing with Conway his entire career, and that's what he'll be remembered for is the inconsistency. Like amazing, amazing games against Duke and Texas, but nowhere to be found against Florida Atlantic. And we really needed him. We really needed Josiah Jordan James, but he only had 10 points in this game. Yeah, we had no one above 10 points. I mean, Santiago Vescovi, unfortunately, in his last game, couldn't even make it to single digits. And we desperately needed him to shoot at a high rate as well. I mean, the whole deal, it's depressing because we could have done so much more. This team, especially with the defensive capabilities, could have done much more in this tournament. They could still be playing this weekend, especially with the way this tournament has unraveled, with all the upsets, all the teams that have been knocked out. This could have been the perfect chance for Tennessee to win a national title, and we've squandered yet another great opportunity. And that, unfortunately, is going to be the story of the Rick Barnes era. That a lot of good teams, a lot of great wins in the regular season, finally won an SEC tournament, but we just can't get it done in March, in the March Madness. And
And,
that
and
doesn't
not
make Rick
only,
Barnes a bad coach.
but when the Vols hired Rick Barnes, it he was already a coach known not to be as successful in March as in October, November, December,
Yeah,
January, and February. It was something to be known of. I mean, he had Kevin Durant. He was the coach at Texas when he had Kevin Durant, right?
right. And they didn't make the Sweet 16. He went
Yeah,
further with this team than he went with freaking Kevin Durant. But here's the thing, though. Like, we weren't thinking about winning national titles when we hired Rick Barnes. We were trying to get the program back on track with Rick Barnes. And he was the perfect hire at the time. Now we're in a spot now where you can pretty much say, all right, Rick Barnes is never winning a national championship with Tennessee. It just isn't going to happen. Um, but you're also in a position where we don't have any historic success. We've never been to a Final Four. Um, you can't. I mean, you can't go out there and say, "Oh, we can just go out there and get someone better than Rick Barnes." I don't think that's going to happen. So for better or for worse, Rick Barnes is our guy. And honestly, I think Rick Barnes did a really good job with this team. We had no true point guard there in the tournament. Now, that is a bit of a fault on Rick Barnes. Why did we not have a second point guard we could have gone to down the stretch? Why did we only have one? So you put that in a way that we were such a vulnerable position heading down the stretch. But at the same time, to get this team to the Sweet 16, I think was an accomplishment. So I think the people calling for Rick Barnes to be fired, it's ridiculous. Um, because let's be honest here, 10 years ago, if you had told me, okay, you can get two Sweet 16s, lots of wins against your biggest rivals, a win over Duke in the tournament, I definitely would have taken that. I mean, I would not trade the last couple of years of basketball for what I had
I
before.
mean, when I got to Knoxville, I remember vividly the 2014 2015 season. I remember that it was my first ever like contact with Tennessee sports, and I remember the basketball team being very below average. It was the Josh Richardson team that was, I think, Tyndall was the coach, if I'm
Yep.
correctly.
1 year of Donnie Tyndall.
Donnie Tyndall. And the fans, I remember going to Thompson Bowling Arena. I remember going against Arkansas, South Carolina, and so many games that and the fans were like not not very much expectations. It was a very okay, we're here, let's cheer. But now the fans embrace this team and they ask for more. Probably kind of like when the team had the run between like 2007 2011 with Bruce Pearl. That was probably the last true great time Tennessee was like number one in the country, got to the Elite Eight, and but the question is, you it's crazy to ask about Rick Barnes being fired, but at the same time, as you mentioned, it doesn't look the glass ceiling is going to be broken with Rick Barnes. So Tennessee's on a crossroad. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the most obvious solution. I mean, you ride out with Barnes until he retires, and you make sure that the recruiting stays at a high level. If the recruiting starts to slip, then you got to have a different conversation. But as long as it keeps the program steady, then you're going to have a high talent pool for whoever comes in next, and that's the coach that will make or break whether or not this program can truly be a championship contender. And in a way, I saw someone compare Rick Barnes to Mark Richt, former coach of Georgia. Georgia was terrible in the 1990s. Mark Richt comes in and turns into a perennial top 10, top 15 team. But Mark Richt, as we all know, could not win national championships. Won 2 SEC titles, could never win the big one, came close a couple of times, but Georgia fans got tired of it. He got fired, and then in comes Kirby Smart, and we know where Georgia football is at now. I guess to me, I feel like Rick Barnes is Mark Richt. And honestly, if you look at the two personalities, they're very, very similar. Both deeply Christian, both, they're both really respected, both really good at what they do, but neither one of them have ever been able to come to the top. And, sometimes you kind of need a Kirby Smart, someone a little bit nastier, someone a little bit dirtier to get the job done. And my question
So,
is, who would be the basketball Kirby Smart for Tennessee?
I mean, I think about a name, but I think Tennessee fans wouldn't be much happier. Penny Hardaway, he kind of have that style, but
Well, I mean, Penny Hardaway has won like what, one tournament game? I mean, he, as a Memphis fan, told me like if his name wasn't Penny Hardaway and he wasn't beloved by Memphis, he'd be fired for a lack of success at Memphis. I mean, he's been there for 5 years. They've won one tournament game. Memphis fans have higher expectations than that.
no, I in college basketball, unlike college football, it's hard to find really good coaches because in football, as we all know, like where Kirby Smart and Jimbo Fisher and many SEC top coaches came from the Nick Saban coaching tree. Like you have so many coaching tree and the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. Like in basketball, it's not that easy. Like and look at the Final Four teams today. Do any of us thought this was going to be the Final Four when the season started?
No,
No. Like in football, everybody expected Georgia, Michigan, and Ohio State to make it. I mean, TCU was a fluke, but was 1 out of 4. Like this year's college basketball, like was total fluke. Like no one thought in UConn in Final Four, everybody thought on the ladies' side, not on the men's side.
I mean, and here's the thing. That's a topic I wanted to bring up because of just how random this Final Four is, and how random it feels like the Final Four is every year. This is not the first time we've seen just a random Final Four out of nowhere. We've seen, South Carolina make the Final Four. We've seen, VCU and Butler play each other in the Final Four. We saw Wichita State make it one year. Teams coming out of nowhere to make a Final Four. I've come to the opinion that I don't think you can really judge a program, judge a coach off of a Final Four appearance because it's just too fluky of a tournament. I mean, because here's the thing. If Farley Dickinson and Purdue played 10 times, Purdue would win 9 times. Farley Dickinson won on a 1 fluke. Princeton would not beat Arizona more than once in 10 times. That was a fluke. Heck, even FAU Tennessee, I'm pretty sure Tennessee would still win probably 7 times, but they got lucky. I don't think San Diego State would beat Alabama more than 2 to 3 times in 10 times. That was a fluke. I think with the way college basketball has gone, with the one and dones, with the change in play, and it feels like the overall talent in college basketball has decreased. With the G League, players going overseas. It's just too random. It felt like in the past, you really had to have some skill to make the Final Four. Now it's just too random. And
I
I
think
really think it's devaluing the Final Four.
I think what's happening to college football is like what's happening in feeling soccer here, let's say in Brazil, where you know, and even more. It all starts with the NBA devaluing college basketball, incentivizing top players to not embrace that the college basketball system, and as you described, G League, which play in empty courts. Like I was watching a G League game yesterday, and the arena was empty. There was no one there. Like, how can a player prefer to play in an empty arena for a game that nobody cares? Like, I think G League is like the minor league that nobody cares. Like, even single A, you know, baseball is more cared about than G League, I bet.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, 20, 30 years ago, players would stay at college for multiple years. You got to know who they were. Think about the Fab Five. Think about like Carmelo at Syracuse. Think about Christian Leitner at Duke. I mean, those are names that people remember and associate with their college basketball careers just as much as they associate them with their NBA career. But now, no NBA player. Like, does anyone remember Kyrie Irving at Duke? Does anyone remember? I mean, I guess people remember Zion at Duke, but does anyone remember John Morant at Murray State? Does anyone remember, um, insert any random player, any college?
even the Vols got a really good player with oh my god, he plays at Boston Celtics right now.
Grant Williams, Grant.
Ray Williams, like, even he, like, of course, he was a great Tennessee player, but nobody really had memories with him, and I don't blame him. I know that players got to make money and stuff, but because I feel like college football is going in one direction that is really successful. You can talk about a lack of parity, regionalization, SEC dominating, but college football still produce top high players. Like, that's why the quarterbacks that are good right now, they all came to the draft not long ago. Lamar Jackson, um, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow. They were drafted like what, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and they're top
Oh,
of the league.
absolutely.
And in the last 6, 7, 8 years, I can think of one player that came out of the draft from the college basketball teams that were successful.
I think.
Maybe
Let
John
me.
Morant.
Yeah, I mean, you have Morant, a couple of good games. Of course, Zion Williamson had a couple of good games at Duke, but I'm trying to think. Like last year, like name a player off of last year's Kansas team. Name a player off of Virginia a couple years ago. I guess DeAndre Hunter is a player for Virginia back in like 2019. I remember Obi Toppin at Dayton, but like name a player off of like 2018 Villanova. I mean, you know, college basketball just does not produce stars anymore. It doesn't produce stars. I mean, you had Brandon Miller was the closest thing we had this year to a star in college basketball, and of course, his name got tainted with the whole murder case.
And Nick, and I feel like this is starting to affect the NBA, because the NBA right now is on a kind of talent drought. What are the players that are deciding right now are Luca, Giannis, international players, or the veteran LeBron, or the veteran Kyrie, or veteran Chris Paul. It's like, or European or veterans. You don't have any. John Moran, I feel like, was the only one. He's on a tricky year where he had off the court issues, but that's why John Morant was so embraced by the NBA world, is because he was the hope that a young player coming from college basketball could be the star of the league.
Yeah, I mean, next year the number one prospect is Victor Wembanyama from France. I mean, like the excitement isn't even coming from college, like you said. It's coming from overseas, and it's just not exciting. It's just not as exciting. And also, I think the structure of the tournament too it works to its detriment. And here's why. So the first 4 days of the NCAA tournament are the absolute four best days of the tournament, and they might be four of the best days of sports. The first and second rounds are absolutely incredible. But I'm going to be honest, from the Sweet 16 on, it loses its punch. It's just not as exciting as when the games are by themselves because you really notice just how slow the game is compared to the NBA. You notice how sloppy it is, how much these guys can't shoot. Because when you're watching four games at once, you don't notice those things because you're just watching all the craziness unfold. Um, and it almost like the thing with the NCAA tournament, it hits you with euphoria off the top, and then it can't sustain it for 3 weeks, and it just makes the ending not as exciting.
I feel like the it should be a restructure. I, I mean, a crazy idea on my head. Why not embrace the World Cup style in the college basketball tournament? Do like a group stage where the like you advanced one out of four, so you have to be the best.
Yeah, I, I mean that would I think get rid of some of these one and duns. Your whole season wouldn't come down to one game, and it would still be chaotic. I mean there wasn't a great team this year, but I think you would have a much more deserving champion than what we're gonna get. I mean UConn, they had a period this year where they lost like 5 out of 7 games. Miami played in not a great conference, and FAU and SDSU play the mid-major conferences. None of these four teams are the four best teams in the country. Yeah, one of them is going to be called national champion because they managed to win 6 straight games in March. Um, I'm going to be honest. Just the more and more I think about, the more I look at it, the less legitimate these national champions seem to be. You know, and honestly, I think most people just don't care who wins it at this point, right? Like last year, Kansas won it. No one cares because everyone remembers North Carolina beating Duke. That's what people cared about. Um,
And and,
so,
and to that point, it was something we're talking about before the show start. Like, let's compare to the World Cup. Like, Argentina lost in a game that maybe was, and it turns out to be a fluke against Saudi Arabia. Then, boom, Argentina out. No,
right.
they had a chance to to win the next two games, advance to to the knockout stage, and then get their team stronger to win it all. In college basketball, it's like you really had to be perfect that month. Like that's why people don't watch college basketball regular season. It's irrelevant. Look at the four teams.
I mean, exactly. Think about this. What could possibly happen? Someone could go 0-30 from November to early March, win 5 games. Like you think about this. Let's say LSU went 0-30 in the regular season. They get to Nashville, start playing on Wednesday. They win Wednesday. Okay, they move on to Thursday. Okay, they pull off an upset Thursday. Then they pull off an upset Friday. Then an upset Saturday. All of a sudden, they're in the SEC title game of 4-30. They win that. They're 5-30, but they're in the NCAA tournament because they won the tournament. Then they win 6 games in March. At 11-30, they're national champions. That is possible in this format,
It is.
and I would love to see someone do that just to break the format because it would show how much of a farce this is and how much it does not reward the best teams. I mean, it's
No,
like NASCAR, like with our playoff structure, like that. It doesn't reward the best driver all year.
that's why football is king in America, Nick. Are you going to argue that Kansas City Chiefs and Georgia Bulldogs weren't the best in college and pro football?
No, no, those two teams, they have earned their rights. Like Georgia earned the number one seed by being undefeated, winning the best conference, and they were able to hold off two legitimate challengers. I mean, Ohio State was legitimately one of the top four teams this year, and then TCU. Yes, I know they beat them 65-7. TCU had earned the right to be in that spot to play them. They're in
Yeah.
Los Angeles,
And
and Kansas City had to go through a tough gauntlet themselves.
but both had regular seasons that those teams had to be on top to get an advantage in the playoffs, or not a, say advantage, but like the regular season matter to the next step. College basketball, it doesn't. It truly, as you pointed out, a scenario where a team can go 11-30 and be the national champion.
I mean,
11-30.
honestly, when we look back at Tennessee season, for example, how much would have helped us? Let's say starting the last week of February, the last 2 weeks. What if Rick Barnes had decided to rest his starters? The last 4 weeks of the season, yeah, we probably would have dropped from a 4 seed to like a 6 or a 7. But we would have had Sakai Ziegler in the tournament. How much would that have helped our team in March if we had rested players? If we had, I mean, how long is it going to be until we start seeing college basketball teams realize, okay, the end of the regular season doesn't matter if we're already in the tournament. Let's just rest players. Like, I want to see like a number one team go into the conference tournament one time and decide to rest their players.
Yeah. Like,
because who cares?
Like, for example, do you really think Georgia were gonna rest any players in the SEC championship? No,
No,
because they had to go through it to be the number one seed.
Yeah, you lose that, then you lose chance to be in Atlanta. But Alabama would have been a 1 seed in any case. So winning the SEC tournament was completely irrelevant for them.
And even and something even I think was Colin Cowherd pointing out. I don't remember, but I remember somebody in sports media pointing out it was perfect. You love the outcome of the upset. You love the story of the upset, but you don't love the outcome of it. Like for San Diego State and Florida Atlantic, great stories. Beat teams that were better. Florida Atlantic beat Tennessee, and San Diego State beat Alabama. But who's gonna watch FAU and San Diego State now?
It's gonna be a lot less than would have watched, like Tennessee, Alabama. That's the Final Four I was hoping for. And instead we get San Diego State and Florida Atlantic, whose fan bases combined are probably a quarter of either Alabama or Tennessee.
And if you even worse for Houston, they were the number one seed. They were the favorites to win it, and Houston was going to host in a Final Four, and they could even make it past Sweet 16.
I mean, think about the host city of Houston here. I mean, 3 out of your 4 teams are Miami, Florida Atlantic, and San Diego State. I mean, that's not going to be a huge crowd for any of those teams. And you have UConn, but UConn's far away. I don't know. I mean, this is just not the this Final Four. It feels gross.
And it was funny that the tickets when I started the show were $77. Now it's $74 to the Final Four.
Yeah, no one's gonna go because who cares? If I were in Houston, I would probably try to go now just to say I went to a Final Four. But I'm not going to travel. I saw the women's Final Four is more expensive to get into. And legitimately, I'm more excited for the women's Final Four than the men's Final Four. The women's Final Four is better. But before we get into that, let's pick the Final Four since we're trashing it as much as I'm trashing it. I also do shout out to San Diego State, by the way, for beating Alabama. That was very funny. I mean, Alabama, all their fans defending their team all year, just to fall apart at the end. As Natos would say, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And Brandon Miller, that much of a shooter, huh? 3 of 19. But, yeah.
And Nick, do you think Nick Saban enjoyed that loss?
I think so. Football is still king. And hey, for Josh Heupel, football is still king in Knoxville and Tuscaloosa. So also too, just as a whole, the SEC took an absolute dump in this tournament. No one made it past the Sweet 16. Arkansas got just demolished by UConn. just uh, just terrible. The entire SEC just was terrible this entire tournament. Also, the Big Ten. No Big Ten teams past the Sweet 16. It just goes to show SEC and Big Ten are football conferences, not basketball ones. The ACC did get one in the Final Four. Big East has one. But I will just say overall, the point I'm trying to make is the NCAA tournament has gotten to a point where it's too random, too chaotic, and you can't use it as legitimately evaluating a coach because, if we just go off Final Four appearances, Rick Barnes is a very overrated coach. But I don't think he is, based off the impact he's had on the Vols. But clearly, his style of coaching is just not fit for the modern version of March Madness. Now, for the preview itself, I think we look at FAU, SDSU. FAU, their main strength is rebounding. They doubled up Kansas State on the boards. I mean, that's insane. Because I thought Kansas State was going to dog walk them. Marquez Noel was still great. But FAU, they're just tenacious on the boards. And I think it's going to be crucial for San Diego State to find a way to beat them at rebounding. Now, San Diego State got lucky against Creighton. There was a phantom foul there at the end that should have been called. I think Creighton got robbed against San Diego State, frankly. That game should have gone into overtime. I think Florida Atlantic's going to win this game. I like the Owls. Granted, I haven't been able to predict anything right about this tournament, but I'll pick the Owls to win.
I picked San Diego State to go to the national championship. I mean, it's kind of like, they deserve to be there after being robbed the chance in 2020. So for that 2020 season, I'm picking San Diego State.
Yeah, and that's, I'm less upset about San Diego State being in there for that reason. I mean, when you look at FAU, they got bailed out against Memphis. They got lucky they played a 16 seed. They got lucky that we couldn't shoot, and then, I guess they earned it against K-State, so I'll give them that. But they shouldn't have been in the position to play K-State. But then it goes to show how lucky you have to be to go to the Final Four. So, I don't know. It's just annoying. Anyway, the second game, UConn and Miami. Miami's been a really good team all year. This UConn team's been all over the place, but right now Connecticut is on fire. I mean, they beat Gonzaga by 30. They beat Arkansas by a ton. They are just on fire. It always feels like the years that UConn wins the national championships are the worst years for the tournament too. Just back 2011, 2014, those seem like two of the worst years for the Final Four for the NCAA tournament. So I'm feeling a Connecticut win. Yeah. Anyway, so while he changed out with that,
no, I was gonna say, Nick, I think it's gonna be UConn, San Diego State in the national title.
I have UConn, FAU, and for the national title, I think FAU will give UConn a good run for their money. UConn, though, is just playing really well right now, and as I said, this just feels like a year UConn's going to win. These are always the most forgettable tournaments when Connecticut wins a national title. So it's going to be Connecticut. The Huskies getting, I think, like their 6th national championship ever or something. The most successful program of this millennium. More successful than Kentucky or Kansas or North Carolina or even Duke. The Connecticut Huskies. Rule us all for a national title. Who would you have against UConn and San Diego State?
UConn. UConn's gonna win it. And you know what's funny now? If UConn men's team win it, how much this affects Gino Auriemma kind of, power in Hartford?
I mean, and Gino's legacy is established. I mean,
no, just because he did I didn't say legacy. His legacy established. I'm saying kind of like, for example, I'm comparing. For example, if Nate Oates and Alabama winning the national title, how much this affects Nick Saban kind of being the kind of this sports program.
I think Gino, he had a lot of injuries this year. Like he didn't have Paige Beckers at all this year. He had several other players go out. I'm chalking their disappointment this year up to injuries. I don't think it was Gino the reason why they lost. I mean they'll be fine. And also too, I think there's a big difference between men's basketball affecting football and women's basketball affecting men's basketball. You know, like if Kelly Harper had won on Saturday, like I don't think Kelly Harper would be trying to threaten Josh Heupel. Like that's just not the way I think that works. Um, but moving over to women's basketball, and this is going to be interesting. So our final four over here, we have Iowa versus South Carolina, and we have Virginia Tech and LSU. So we have two SEC teams. Neither one of them the Lady Vols. Lady Vols got knocked out by Virginia Tech, a game where they fell behind by like 17 early, and they rallied to only be down by one in the fourth quarter, but they just couldn't get it done at the end. I think it was still overall an okay season. I know they had high expectations before the season. They didn't really live up to those throughout the regular season, but they really got hot towards the end. They beat LSU in the SEC tournament. And were really good the first two rounds of the tournament, but just couldn't get it done here. Second straight loss in the Sweet 16. And you just have to wonder how many more Sweet 16s can the Lady Vols go through and not win before it really gets on Kelly Harper just from administration. Because Lady Vols expect to be at Elite Eights, Final Fours. But I think next year is going to be massive because virtually everyone but Jordan Horston is coming back next year. And I think Jordan Horston, even though she has some really good games, I do think at times she held the team back in terms of ball handling and stuff, in terms of, shot selection. And I think next year, especially with Tamara Key coming back and some infusion of other talent, I think the Lady Vols should be a really, really good team.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be I saw the announcement of Jordan Horston. I think she was the only one who felt that was not gonna stay, in the team. But I think the trajectory of the program looks more promising under Kelly Harper than, for example, under Holly Warlick. I think I'll give 1 or 2 seasons more for Kelly.
Ooh, that is. Oh yeah. I mean, I certainly hope that it all works because I really want to see her. Because if it doesn't work out with her, then it means the Lady Vols are going to have to go outside the tree, and that will be an emotional day for everyone involved in the program. Because obviously, this program has always been either Pat Summitt or one of her former players.
I think what's happening right now to the Lady Vols is like when Alabama, had to kind of disconnect from the Bear Bryant era. It's hard to. Bear Bryant was a true legend in Tuscaloosa, and the program wanted to keep his legacy alive by bringing former players to coach, and that did not bring any success. Then they got a coach that was legit, like Nick Saban, and now he's is starting to match or even can be beyond Bear Bryant. I think that's the kind of era that we're going through right now with the Lady Vols.
Absolutely, and we'll have to see how this plays out. I think with the talent they have right now, Kelly's going to have to capitalize on it. It's going to be difficult, but I think next year is going to be huge for Kelly Harper. But looking at the current Final Four, I mean, South Carolina is the team to beat. I mean, they're 36-0, trying to go for immortality, being undefeated, national champion. But I think they have a massive test on Friday night because they got to go against the Iowa Hawkeyes and the best player in the country, Caitlin Clark, on Sunday against Louisville. Sorry, Jason. I know he was rooting hard for Haley Van Lith and the Lady Cards, but the Caitlin Clark, 41 points, 10 rebounds, 12 assists, triple-double to send Iowa to the Final Four. In this tournament alone, she is shooting over 50% from three. I mean, Caitlin Clark, one of the best players I've ever seen in women's basketball. I mean, I remember watching her as a freshman a couple years ago light up Kentucky, and I right then and there I said she is like a female Steph Curry, and I mean she is just an absolute monster. And frankly, if she can go off like that, Iowa is the team that if anyone can do it, I think they're the team that can beat South Carolina. And I am going to be rooting hard for Iowa because that team is fun to watch. And I think this is out of the four Final Four games, men or women, Iowa, South Carolina, it is the game to watch.
I mean, as a true star that Iowa have, I think she's like half an hour after the game signing autographs. She's crazy. But LSU South Carolina would be an insane matchup. I remember they playing, I believe, was for the SEC championship and even the regular season. That was a great matchup.
I mean, LSU Iowa, I think would be the best national title matchup. And obviously, Virginia Tech, you got to give them their laurels as well. I mean, I honestly did not think they were great. Um, I know they're a one seed, and I kind of disrespect them. I thought Tennessee would beat them, but I do have to give them their laurels. I mean, their best player, Elizabeth Kitley, really good. Georgia Moore, very good. Um, I kind of in a way disrespected them, and I shouldn't have done that. But hey, we all live, we all learn, and Virginia Tech certainly deserves their spot here. And it's going to be interesting to see because Virginia Tech has some stars. And, LSU of Angela Reese has some stars. Kim Mulkey has that experience from Baylor in the Final Four. And this is the thing. It's kind of weird. I can't really name you a lot of the players from the men's Final Four. I can name you some of these players from the women's Final Four. The women's Final Four actually has star coaches, actually has star players. I mean, I think the Cavs sports fans can actually name you more of the coaches and more of the players. I mean, you got Zaya Cook and Aja Moore from South Carolina. I mean, there's more star power in the women's Final Four than there is in the men. So
Yeah, I mean, and also this proves that if you let the ability in sports kind of overpass the sometimes old woke attitude of force and interest instead of make people interest. Look what happened. It's unbelievable that the women's Final Four tickets are more expensive than the men's Final Four because they deserve it, because they made it interesting. That's what is amazing.
and also too, just to also to point this out, Iowa Louisville on Sunday night had higher ratings on ESPN than any single NBA game on ESPN has had this year, which is an incredible accomplishment for women's basketball. I mean, they legitimately have become a more interesting product. And I think part of it is kind of women's basketball is still like what college basketball used to be like 20 years ago for the men. Because these girls, they go to college and they actually stay for 3-4 years. Like Caitlin Clark, she's been there since 2019. She has built a following. The people of Iowa are all in on Caitlin Clark. She's basically the female Peyton Manning of Iowa at this point, right? She's the most influential female athlete in the history of that state. One of the most influential athletes, period, in that state. You don't get that in the men's game anymore because people don't stay there for 4 years. And we have to find a way to get back to that in the men's side because the women right now, they actually show you what college basketball should look like in terms of players getting that following. Like those Iowa fans, I was watching their home game against Georgia a couple weeks ago in the second round. I mean, that thing was filled to the brim. Those people had custom T-shirts for Caitlin Clark. I mean, they love her. There's people down in South Carolina love Zaya Cook. I mean, these people are on the South Carolina Iowa fans are arguing over who's the better female player. I mean, this wasn't happening 5-10 years ago. Like these people, like we saw when the Lady Vols are getting good. Like Tennessee will get behind them. These because of the long of how long these players stay here. Like there's more connection to them.
And I feel this urgency of making a quick buck kind of makes you more suitable to a failure in professional sports. Because the more you stay in college, you more develop to be a better player. Like, do you think if Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes play 1 year in college, they would have been as better, and if they played 3 or 4 years?
I mean, and Joe Burrow's second year, uh, he threw for 16 touchdowns, and then he went to 60 his junior year. I mean, think about this in the NBA this year. Who is the best rookie in the NBA this year? I mean, we don't have a LeBron. I mean, if you look at advanced statistics, they say Walker Kessler, Jalen Williams. Like, none of these guys are superstars right now. The number one overall pick, Jaden Ivey, is only 10th on that list, I mean, it's just not. I mean, none of these guys are coming in and doing much of anything. I mean, Pablo Banchero would have been better off staying in college. Uh, some of these other players would have been better off staying in college. I mean, Brandon Miller is about to be a top 5 pick, despite going in a critical postseason game 3 of 19 shooting. I mean, Derek Lively is going to be drafted high for his defensive ability. Yeah, he failed to take a single shot against Tennessee. Um, Meanwhile, you have Victor Wembanyama dropping like 30 points a game in France. So that's where your true stars are coming from. But the WNBA, in the contrast, Caitlin Clark's going to go to WNBA and light it up. Asia Moore's going to go light it up. Haley Van Lift's going to go light it up. Because these are all developed great players. And these players just don't get that same development on the men's side.
Oh yeah, and I feel like that probably in the long run will make WNBA more interesting on its own without the kind of woke appeal, just the true sports appeal.
Yeah, like Caitlin Clark gets drafted, I'm gonna have to legitimately watch her because that's good. I mean, she's gonna be. I mean, as I said, she's female Steph Curry. I mean, that can rebound. I mean, she goes out to rebound. She's averaging like, what does she average a game? Because I know she's had a couple of triple doubles. I have to pull up her stats real quick. She's averaging, so her season stats this year: 27.3 points per game, 8.6 assists per game. So she's third in the country in scoring. She's first in the country in assists. And she still averages 7.3 rebounds a game. She's only 6 feet tall. Like, I mean, that's incredible. She's for what she's doing. And averaging 47% shooting. I mean, as you said, everyone's trying to make a political push for women's basketball to be bigger, right? You just got to give people something to watch. And like even on like the Twitter and Instagram comment sections, I saw someone point this out. Usually when someone posts something about women's basketball, there's all kinds of memes down there. People are like, oh, we don't want to see this. But when it comes to her, people want to watch. People are actually interested in watching. And I hope it makes some fans out of the game. Because I think, in a way, I think in the women's game, they play better fundamentally. They're usually a lot better at free throw shooting. Because on the men's side, they're more worried about flashy dunks. But at the same time, they play a lot dumber on the men's side. I mean, look at the Furman, Virginia game. Like how stupid that ending was. Just like I feel like in this men's tournament alone, we've seen so many stupid plays, especially towards the end of games. And you don't see that many stupid plays at the end of women's games because I think they play usually a lot more disciplined. So it's just really interesting to compare where both sides of college basketball are at right now. It'd be interesting to get like Maria Cornelius's take on
That's
this.
true. That's true. She would definitely be a great guest on our pod. I legitimately gonna contact her for next week.
Yeah, because it really does feel like that right now. The women's game is in a much better spot, and a much more legitimate spot. Because I think the 4 teams are in the women's Final Four are all deserving teams. While on the men's side, I don't. Maybe UConn is. I don't think any of the other ones are. But kind of to not belabor the point, who do we think is going to get it done here? First Virginia Tech LSU. I think Virginia Tech's the better team, but I can't discount Kim Mulkey's experience in this tournament. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a great game. I do think that the Tigers are going to find a way to get it done.
I believe it's going to be South Carolina winning it all against LSU.
See, my head is telling me like South Carolina's going to win it all too, that they're going to be Iowa, but I'm telling you, I really, really want Iowa to win it all. So from a head perspective, Iowa, of course, head perspective, I think South Carolina's going to finish undefeated. I think Don Staley will get it done, but I am hoping that Caitlin Clark brings back parity to women's college basketball and
But
takes
but
up Carolina.
but think about the storylines of the semifinal: the undefeated versus the star.
Right? And then you have the superstar coach for LSU taking her home state team to its first Final Four in a long time versus the upstart Virginia Tech Hokies. So the storylines there are just exquisite compared to what we have on the men's side.
Definitely going to be an interesting one this weekend. The national championship for the ladies is going to be on Sunday, I believe.
Yep. So women's is Friday, Sunday, men is Saturday and Monday. So by the time next week, college basketball season will be over. One last college basketball thing. Last week we didn't have time to get to this. There were several college basketball coaching changes. Rick Pitino went from Iona to St. John's. Tobin Anderson, the coach at Florida Dickinson, is going to replace him at Iona. Ed Cooley is leaving Providence. He's been there for a long time, going to Georgetown. Paul Mills going from Oral Roberts to Wichita State. And Michael Shrewsbury leaving Penn State to go to Notre Dame. Which one of those do you think is the best move, best hire?
Wichita State, because Paul Mills, what he did at Oral Roberts, putting Oral Roberts on the map in college basketball.
Yeah, I think that's a very underrated hire here. Of course, Rick Pitino in New York, you can't really go wrong with that. I'm curious to see how Tobin Anderson does at Iona because, I mean, as I said, he had one great game. Does that make him a great coach? We'll have to wait and see. Ed Cooley to Georgetown's the most interesting one because I'm going to be honest, is Georgetown a program beyond saving? They used to be really, really good back in the 80s and 90s, but it feels like that Georgetown no longer has the grip of Washington, D.C. It feels like, anyone's just going to go anywhere they want now. And I think a small school like Georgetown, just even in the nation's capital, is not going to have that same appeal like it used to.
I thought Patrick Ewing was going to do a good job there. I guess I was wrong.
Right. And if he couldn't get it done, that school's most famous alumni, between him and like Allen Iverson, like who's going to get it done there? I mean, Ed Cooley's a good coach, but he hasn't won anything of significance at Providence, which is not a bad basketball school in itself. So, yeah, but it'll be interesting to see how some of these hires pan out. But we transition off the hardwood as one season comes to a close. Another one opens. It's MLB opening week on Thursday. Thursday is opening day here. Of course, we've wrapped up the World Baseball Classic last week, and we now have opening day. So some of the opening day matchups, you have Braves Nationals, Giants Yankees, Orioles Red Sox, Brewers Cubs, Tigers Rays. You have Phillies Rangers, Twin Royals, Mets Marlins, Pirates Reds, Blue Jays Cardinals, Rockies Padres, White Sox Astros, Angels Athletics, Diamondbacks Dodgers, and Guardians and Mariners. So early on in the season, of course, is a long season, 162 games. No one's going to make the playoffs in the first couple of weeks. No one's going to miss the playoffs in the first couple of weeks. What are we watching for here early on?
I think to kind of spot the who can be legit and who's gonna tank. I mean, it's sad that none of this matchups. Like one thing that MLB should learn from NFL or NBA is like the first matchup should be impactful. I would have put the Angels versus the Dodgers, like oh my gosh, Shohei Otani versus Clayton Kershaw, or something like that. So like the NFL does this perfectly. The opening game should be a kind of like a storyline from the past couple of seasons, or even the past season.
Yeah, especially with Shohei Otani being in a contract year, and everyone's going to be trying to pay for his services this year. So there's also going to be a cloud looming over the Angels. Can the Angels find a way to keep him, or will the Dodgers or Yankees come in and pay him $700 million?
I mean, making a low, but like it be not I say between money and career, but it's like he knows he's not gonna win anything if he stays in Anaheim. He needs to go to uh LA, to true LA, or even the Yankees.
Yeah, and I think we're going to continue to see the struggle between the teams that have high payroll, so the teams are just consistent. The Dodgers and Yankees versus teams like the Astros, Padres, and Braves. And then, can a team like the Phillies repeat their success at the end of last season? Because when you look at the Braves, I think that I think we're in a in a spot to have another really good season and put ourselves in a position that maybe have another run in October.
Yeah, yeah, and also to and how much the Astros are gonna keep this dynasty going. They're like the Astros, like you can say as much as you want about them, and of course they're gonna be known for some things that they were not proud of, especially all the cheating scandal. But it's hard to be this dynasty for that long.
Yes, yes, and it's been impressive what they've done. And the part of the problem is, can anyone challenge them in their division? Can the Mariners make a move for them? Can the Angels get themselves together? Uh, but it just doesn't look like it. Obviously, we know the Oakland Athletics probably will not. I would assume.
I mean, the Oakland A's are only going to be viable again when they move out of the Coliseum. You know, it's
Yep.
depressing, but unfortunately, the city of Oakland right now they are on a stage of rebuild as a city. You know, they're gonna have to figure out a way to modernize themselves because the Coliseum definitely is the most outdated, the pro stadium with like the most outdated pro stadium in America.
I mean, honestly, I'm looking at the ESPN article now that rates all the teams. They give Oakland 0% playoff odds, 0.0% World Series odds.
Yeah, and so who wants to go to the games?
Yeah. I mean, everyone else at least has 1%. Well, okay, Colorado has 0% playoff odds, apparently, according. Detroit has 1%. Pittsburgh has 4% playoff odds. Kansas City has 5. It seems so long ago that Kansas City went to back-to-back World Series and won a World Series.
Yeah, they have Paulo Orlando.
Yeah, one. They had 2 good years and they went back into the abyss. So it's going to be certainly interesting. I think the team with the most pressure has to be the Mets, right? Like
With all the
blown
payroll.
last year. Yep, a lot of payroll. I mean, obviously Edwin Diaz though blowing up his knee is not great. Um,
To that point, do you see that tweet from Keith Olbermann, like trashing the World Baseball Classic, using that injury as an example? It's stupid. It's like you know, for example, I don't recall it like a major injury in the World Cup, but if it happened, oh well, it's life. You can get like we said last week, you can get injured for so many things, but you can't delegitimize a tournament that caught on, that has so much appeal because of one player getting injured.
Yeah, I mean it's just bad luck. Also, when also with the Padres too, when Fernando Tatis comes back, I'm very curious to see if that truly is a World Series contender.
They're gonna have to make it or break it because I don't know if Manny Machado is gonna stay. It-
Juan
this is
Soto,
just, yeah, Juan Soto's gonna stay. Like this year is make it or break it.
absolutely, and especially like those Dodgers Padres games are going to be just absolute bangers this year, like must watch.
So why, so why you not starting the season with the Dodgers and Padres series? Why?
I mean, here's the thing: we should get like Dodgers Padres and like we should get Dodgers Padres, Braves Mets, Red Sox Yankees. I mean, Angels and you want to put like the Angels against the
Angels Houston.
Astros. Like
Yeah,
make the World Series champion go up against the best player in baseball. Give the Phillies I mean you could get the Phillies someone good. Um like I mean it would be pretty I mean those are all much more interesting matchups. Like the Braves play the Nationals this weekend. The Nationals are literally ranked last on this chart. So I mean, the Giants Yankees is really good. Um, rest of these matchups, I mean, Rockies. The Padres host the Rockies. Angels are going to the Athletics. The Dodgers are playing the Diamondbacks. None of those are
like
great series.
yeah, it's like MLB picks the non-appealing games at first.
Yeah.
That's why Robert Manfred needs to have a meeting, or maybe a weekend of of like learning with Roger Goodell. MLB should really look at the NFL and be like, "Hey, we need to learn something from you to make our league appealing." Because the NFL now is the king, and like let's say 40, 30 years ago, it didn't look that way.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why the MLB is falling off. They have too many games, and the games are inaccessible. And what's going to be interesting is with the recent bankruptcy of Bali Sports, how does that affect baseball starting this year? Because it seems like most of these games are still going to be available via the RSNs for now, but there's a chance that they could go belly up at any time. So I think it's going to be
Imagine,
a fascinating TV year.
imagine all the crew and talent that work on this RSNs coming to the season with all the expect any day to be like, oh, we're done.
Oh yeah, um, I mean the MLB is going to have to take over its own production at some point. So I think that honestly, the season might be as much about the off the field storylines as it is what happens on the field. But we'll certainly keep up with it as we begin to play ball starting on Thursday across the country. And honestly, too, I saw someone else say this that maybe they should wait until middle of April to start. Like, what if they start at Easter weekend? Like, give them like
Yeah.
a date there to start. And let it get a little bit warmer up north. Like, I know my dad is in Milwaukee right now at a conference. It's
For,
in the 30s and there's snow on the ground there. It's not baseball weather up
for
north.
me, for me, the weekend they should start MLB season is Memorial Day weekend. That's where people really kind of pay attention to. Like the NBA. NBA should start on Christmas. MLB should start on Memorial Day.
That's a good point.
That's
That's
like because that's the holidays that really people think about the sport itself. Like, what holiday do we kind of connect to baseball? Memorial Day.
like
What holiday?
football's Labor Day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, what would be hockey though? I mean, hockey. I guess I think of like Christmas, New Year's too for them.
But hockey, it's not on the top category of leagues that matter. You know that hockey is kind of
Yeah,
the same level of MLS. Like, let's be real about it.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely true.
Like,
Sorry,
like,
Dylan, if you're listening to this,
yeah,
but
because the NHL is not on the folk of the American sports culture. Like American sports culture is about football, baseball, and basketball. Like soccer and hockey are interesting. People like to cheer on it, but it's not an intrinsic in the culture.
yeah, you're absolutely true. Unless you're like in the far north, like you're in Minnesota, Wisconsin, hockey is definitely entrenched there. But if you're in Tennessee, it is because of cultural and climatical reasons. But it's gonna be fun to watch some baseball this year. And also, too, I forgot to put this in. Shout out to the baseballs. They swept Texas A&M. Good recovery this weekend after getting swept the weekend before. So they're back to 500 in SEC play. I'll be curious to see what they do as they continue to go through the season. All right, let's get back to the gridiron. Some NFL news because Lamar Jackson is apparently asking for a trade. And of course, he wants to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in all of football. And a lot of people are saying that Deshaun Watson's contract last year completely upended the market. What do you think is going to happen here with Lamar Jackson? Is he going to stay in Baltimore? Should he be traded somewhere else? Is he going to get the money that he wants?
Like I was thinking this while I was reading and listening to the story of Lamar Jackson. Do you know why he's the player that is most kind of triggered by this Deshaun Watson news contract? Who was Deshaun Watson's biggest quarterback rival in college?
It was Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson. You know those matchups, Clemson, Louisville.
Yep. And, it's crazy. Like all the stuff that Deshaun Watson allegedly did off the field, probably did off the field. And Deshaun
And
Watson
Lamar
still
Jackson,
got that contract.
yeah, like Lamar Jackson. Look at all that happening, with Deshaun Watson, and then things about it. Oh my God, we went neck and neck in college. Deshaun Watson had a better team and a better coach, and I still went neck and neck with him. If that game, that Saturday night in South Carolina, went a different way, maybe Lamar Jackson would have been a national champion that year. I don't know. Do you remember the 2017 matchup?
Oh yeah, I mean that was a heartbreaking loss for Louisville.
Yeah. So that is in the back of his mind, and then he's like my winning percentage in the regular season is better. I have actually went to the playoffs. I know his tracking record in the playoffs is not good, but like so I have all of this, and I still not gonna get a better contract than Deshaun Watson. But that's why the Cleveland Browns, it's the I'll say the worst franchise in all pro sports because they screw up so much that now it's affecting not only themselves but the league as a whole.
Yeah, and it's just really insane to think about it because I feel like the NFL is overreacting a little bit to the market, right? Because when Deshaun Watson got that contract, every other owner in the league was like, "What in the world did you just do, Cleveland? Why would you give him that contract?" Because now every other quarterback in the world wants that contract, and only a few are really worth it, right? Like Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow are worth that much. I don't even know if Deshaun Watson's worth that much. We'll have to see this year if he can get back to his Houston form. Part of me is doubting that he can. For Lamar Jackson, when he's healthy, he's pretty good. Now, he isn't the best thrower, but obviously he's gotten better at that aspect. He can make your team very dynamic, but can he win it in the postseason? I'm not sure. Um, he's won one playoff game as a starter in the league. And Baltimore, without him this year, almost upset Cincinnati on the road and really should have if Anthony Brown doesn't throw a 100-yard pick six in the fourth quarter. That completely flips the game on its head. Um, I guess the question to ask if Baltimore doesn't keep Lamar Jackson, who gets Lamar Jackson? And,
If I
you
was the
know,
Patriots, I would have definitely make a shot at him. I think he would have worked great in New England.
that certainly is an option. You know who else I think may be an option? Um, Maybe our two favorite NFL teams to talk about. I think the Colts and the Titans might be top options potentially. Um, Obviously the price tag for Lamar Jackson would be insane for either one of these teams. But considering that both teams have, top tier running backs right now. Now, there's some rumors that suggest that the Titans would trade Lamar Jackson and then get rid of Derrick Henry, which would be very possible. And you probably would have to do that to clear the cap room. And then I don't know what you do with Ryan Tannehill because you have to get rid of that cap room. But Lamar Jackson in Nashville would be a very interesting fit. Um, I don't think that would make us title contenders, but I would be at least more exciting. Maybe we would score 30 points in the game this year.
Oh yeah, Lamar Jackson is gonna find a market, but right now, not even Aaron Rodgers have a market. So the teams are kind of like, and it's hard to make deals before the those kind of deals before the draft, because the draft, even if you don't trade it yet, you're still thinking about it. I think we're gonna get more clarity after the draft.
Absolutely, because you have to really consider, and also too for each one of these teams, I would consider doing it. Um, what do you have right now? What is your future right now? And because the Titans are really heading into a rebuild, but getting a player like Lamar Jackson accelerates that rebuild. And I would not be opposed to it. It would make me way more excited to watch the Titans next year if that happens. Now, on the flip side, I would absolutely hate to see him go to Indianapolis, but I could see that to be a legitimate option as well. We know Indianapolis has liked not drafting quarterbacks. They would rather sign quarterbacks. And frankly, Indy, they're at the fourth spot. They missed their chance to get that number one pick.
But you say this, but who were the last two great quarterbacks Indy had?
You know, I mean,
They went to the
well,
draft.
yeah,
Peyton
Peyton
Manning
and Luck.
and Andrew Luck. They went
Yeah,
to the
which is why
draft.
they need to draft, which they
Yeah,
should draft. If they smart, they will draft. But it just seems like they've gotten addicted to trading and to signing different, new other quarterbacks. Um, and would they be willing to do Lamar Jackson again, or would you see a team like maybe the Raiders get into the mix?
that's why they're, you know. But I think you can still find good quarterbacks in the number four. Everybody's not looking at Hendon Hooker or even Bryce Young.
Yeah, I mean, the Titans did come out today and say that that Tannehill, Mike Vrabel came out and said that he said this quote. Of course we do. We are in March. We're continuing to build a football team, the best football team we can. And Ryan is healthy. He's getting healthy. I would say that he's putting work in. It's good to see him around the building. And of course, we want Ryan as our quarterback and everyone else that's helped us to win. Although he gave him those encouraging words, he did add that he wouldn't commit to anyone being on the roster when the season began. So mixed comments there. Interesting you add in that last part. I mean, if I'm Mike Vrabel, I look at the offense that we had last year and know that's completely unacceptable. Because Mike Vrabel has a lot of goodwill built up, I'm willing to give last year a pass. But you have to do something because this has to be at least watchable, and especially with the fact that I think Josh Heupel does him a disservice in this regard. It's like in the same boat that Rick Barnes is. We get so used to watching great offense on Saturdays with the balls, and that you have to find a way to continue at least a somewhat respectable effort on Sundays. Because I can't go from the high that the balls give me to what the Titans push out on the field every single
But
week last year.
my Mike Vrabel would have said to you if he heard that comment.
That I can't compare the two, right?
Yeah, and it's like, hey man, we do our jobs to do good on Sunday. I don't know what. uh, Josh Heupel does it. Credit to him, but he does his job. I do mine.
Well, all
He
I
would
know
have
is they
said
lost 7 straight games to end the year and lost the division to Jacksonville. That's all I know. That's all I see. You know. Um, and frankly, I mean, it was some of the most atrocious football I've ever watched in my life. I mean, that Christmas Eve loss to Houston is one of the top 5 worst Titans losses I've ever seen. You know, like they couldn't do anything. Like they look so handicapped in the same league where you have Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes and Cincinnati just doing whatever they want on offense. The Titans look like they don't know what they're doing on offense.
I mean, there's still, I feel like, uh, recovering from that loss in 2021 in that divisional round. That loss
Oh
really.
yeah, and I feel like they've been recovering for years because of that loss. You know, so I hope they figure out something. You know, because I don't expect them to be title contenders anytime soon, but I do want them to be watchable at least. Because by the end, I was not unhappy that they lost to Jacksonville. I was like, just let this be over because it was kind of hard watching them by the end. You know, I still watched them rooting for them, but man, it wasn't the most fun experience, especially with AJ Brown being on a Super Bowl contending team. So, and that's going to be hanging over the franchise they get until they get that resolved. And I think one of the other things to watch for too.
Uh,
Let me see if this has been
Nick,
resolved.
and one
Yeah.
thing I want to ask you about, since you're a Titans fan, what do you expect of second year quarterback Malik Willis?
Willis.
Malik Willis. Do you think he's going
I
to
hope he's able to
improve?
read it. I really hope so. I mean, there were a handful of flashes last year. I'm like, okay, that was a really good throw. I like that athleticism there. But man, they were most of it couldn't read NFL defenses, could not could not stay in the pocket. I mean, remember, he got benched for Josh Dobbs. I mean, Josh Dobbs was the better option by the end of the year. I mean, I don't know. If he doesn't prove he can read defenses, that he can make quick decisions, that he can place the ball downfield, then, you know, it's just not going to work. And at the very least, we only wasted a third round draft pick, right? If this was a first round draft pick, it would be really, really like, okay, we got to find something here. Third round's like, okay, I'm hoping we can find something, but, it is only a third round pick. That didn't go well if he doesn't develop. But I think the thing I'm much more concerned about is Kevin Byard, the safety. There's been rumors for like over a week now that Byard and the Titans have been in a contract impasse, and that the Kevin Byard might be traded because the Titans don't want to pay him what he wants, which sounds an awful lot like AJ Brown last year. And Kevin Byard's one of the best safeties in all of the NFL. He's the best player on the team right now. If the Titans let him walk, fans should be at the stadium protesting because we have to really start asking serious questions while the Titans would be unwilling to pay any of their good players. This also goes for Jeffrey Simmons. If he's not paid what he wants, you know?
Tough decisions for the front office to make.
Very tough decisions because you're obviously, I get you have the balance, but you're trying to balance, but at the same time, you gotta like think we can't let every single one of our star players walk, or otherwise you're gonna be at ground zero, like with the Browns were several years ago, and you really aren't gonna have anything. Like look at the Texans. Their best player is an offensive lineman. So it just yeah, I just really hope they get that resolved because that would be really bad. Um a couple of other minor NFL moves. Adam Thielen signs with the Panthers. Brandon Cooks traded to the Cowboys. I think these are two pretty good receivers. Which one do you think's bigger? Like, I think he obviously Cooks the Cowboys is pretty big because I think that gives Dak a consistent wide receiver target to throw to. Like he's not a big play guy, but that's someone I think that he can develop a good repertoire with.
Yeah, I think that move shows that the front office knows that they need to find, mm, they need to strengthen the offense to make Dak work. Like they need to find pieces to make Dak better because of the contract Dak has it.
Oh, absolutely. And, CD Lamb is still going to blow the top off of defenses. I've seen some mock drafts that suggest they might draft Jalen Hyatt, which, I mean, could you imagine Hyatt and CD Lamb on the same team? I mean, that would be such a fast receiving core. It'd be reminiscent of the Chiefs, some of their cores.
Yeah,
Um, and also, a rumor Odell Beckham potentially to the Jets. And
he
obviously, we
just
must mention Aaron Rodgers has not yet been traded.
I mean, I think he just missed New York. That's all. He wants to go back to New York, and I think the Giants are not gonna take him, so he needs to get with the Jets. But do you know why the Jets are not desperate to sign Aaron Rodgers? Because they know that the leverage are on them. You know, the Packers are the one who needs to make the trade, not the Jets to get it. Because if even if the Jets truly stink this year, they're gonna have they're gonna go to a quarterback class that is loaded with talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, honestly, if it's worth trading your future away for Aaron Rodgers at this point. You know, you still got a really young team. I would honestly wait for a younger quarterback if I'm the Jets. But granted, it would give you a short term title chance with Aaron Rodgers. But I honestly don't think it would work. Also, one last NFL note: Ezekiel Elliott focusing on maybe going to the Philadelphia Eagles, New York Jets, or Cincinnati Bengals. Where should he go?
Bengals, I think, have more established offense, will give more options to Joe Burrow. I think he's gonna work great with the Zach Taylor. I think he should go to the Bengals.
Actually, I'm going to say the Jets. I think the Bengals are good as they are with Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine. The Eagles have a whole committee of running backs already. I don't think Ezekiel Elliott makes them better. I think the Jets would actually make that offense better. I think that I know you got Brees Hall coming back from injury. Michael Carter is good, but I mean I think Elliott would be an upgrade over Carter, and that would serve as that uh, serve as a 1-2 role with Brees Hall. I think that's where he should go.
Yeah, it's a trick decision to make. I think he still have a market, but I don't know how big of a market.
Absolutely. Um, some other quick notes here. NASCAR went to Circuit of the Americas this last week. First race in over 6 years without stage cautions, which was really nice to see. Nice to see the race actually flow naturally. Unfortunately, the end became kind of a joke. They kept on crashing like every restart, heading into that really tight turn one in Austin. Just really silly. They got to find a way to kind of tamper down the aggression of the drivers, because it makes them looks unserious to be constantly crashing into each other heading into the end. But the best driver of the day won by far, Tyler Reddick. Amazing performance by him. So pretty interesting. I I, I think they got to find a way to adopt some F1 rules like the sector cautions. I think maybe going back to single file restarts of road courses would help, but penalizing for contact to an extent because I mean people are just dive bomb. I don't know if you're familiar with the Circuit of the Americas, Gus. When you go up the straightaway into turn one, there's a very tight hairpin turn and these drivers were just basically dive bombing through there. And the last four restarts, like multiple people got turned every single time for a professional racing series. I mean, it was embarrassing to watch.
Yeah, it's a hard kind of moment for NASCAR. They should really, look at this and with very cautious.
Oh, absolutely. Also, MLS recap. Shout out to our guest last week for coming on the show.
Oh, Jason did not had a good weekend. I'll say this.
Yeah, the unfortunately, I know he said that he was
Six
having a lot.
one. 6-1.
Yeah, just a brutal week for the Atlanta United.
Also to Nashville too, they lost to Cincy. So, oh my God, even in soccer, Cincinnati defeats Nashville
Uh,
in Nashville.
just yeah, I mean they just own us. They own the city of Nashville. I mean, look, I'm not going to pile on Nashville. It's been a rough 48 hours for them. So you know, not to dwell on that. If I were to dwell on that enough with work, but anyway, so I want to know, heading down to Brazil, what is going on with Paulista? I know Palmeiras and Agua Santa are playing for it all. Let me know what
Yeah,
happened in that first leg.
no, the first leg did not happen because we had as you remember, I think I mentioned on the show last week when we had a conversation with Jason, we had the international break, so there were no action in São Paulo and Rio State Championship. Only in Rio Grande do Sul we had the semifinals. Grêmio make it, Inter did not make it, and I forgot to send you. There was a really sad scene. A father invaded the pitch holding his daughter and try to hit the other team's players. That was a scene I never seen before. Like it was disgraceful.
Why did he do that?
Now he's gonna might lose he might lose the guard, like might lose the uh uh I don't know the term, like when you don't
Guardianship.
yeah, he might lose his guardianship of the daughter. It's just
So he was
unbelievable.
parading his kids around as a form of soccer protest.
No, the team lost in penalty kicks. He invaded the pitch, holding the daughter to try to hit the other team's player.
Wow. I mean, we're passionate about sports, clearly. We come on, we talk about sports for 2-3 hours a week on here. And you do a lot of sports podcast, sports radio shows. I talk sports all the time. But I can't
This
imagine holding a little kid and fighting over the result of any sporting event.
and I made that comment on my Brazilian sport radio show today. It, I mean, the marriage. I don't know if the marriage is gonna last. Imagine being the wife, seeing your husband doing something like that. That was
Someone
real.
tells me that relationship already ended.
I bet it's going to. There was no news about it, but I'm interested to see that development. But before I talk to the state championships, Brazil had their first game before the World Cup of last year. Still with the interim head coach, Ramon Menezes. We lost to Morocco 2-1. It was in Morocco the game. A lot of players from like the Brazilian league. No Neymar, no other star. We had Vini Jr., Casemiro, but the it was an interesting game at last, but nothing to take on it. Uh, Libertadores and Sudamericana groups are set as well. I think Corinthians got into a really hard group. I'm trying to pull out here to find the groups itself, but I think Corinthians group is going to be really hard. Argentino Juniors, Independiente del Valle, which I think you remember, uh, beat Flamengo in the Recup, the Recopa Sul-Americana. So I don't. So now I have it. Let me pull up here at least the both. First, the Libertadores group here. So we have Flamengo at Group A with Racing from Argentina, Aucas, and Nublense. I think Flamengo is a heavily favorite in that group. Group B, we have Internacional from Brazil, Nacional Uruguay, Metropolitanos from Venezuela, and Independiente Medellin from Colombia. I think this group is going to be very kind of close. I feel like it's going to be tied up, but I think it's going to be Nacional International. Palmeiras is going to dominate Group C. Bolivar from Bolivia, Barcelona for Ecuador, Sao Portino for Paraguay. Palmeiras is going to dominate it.
I was
Group
about to
D,
ask, is that like the is that like I assumed it was an FC Barcelona from Spain. When I first took a glance at that, I'm like, oh, is that the Spanish Barcelona? I'm like, there's no way. That's the Spanish Barcelona. And also see there's a Liverpool too, but obviously that's not the
yeah, no,
English.
yeah, it's the Uruguayan version of it. The Group D is interesting. Fluminense from Brazil, River Plate from Uruguay, the strongest Bolivia, Sporting Cristal from Peru. So this, I think River Plate and Fluminense going to advance, but the strong play in how high altitude. Sporting Cristal, is a tricky team coached by a known Brazilian coach. Group E is going to be tough for Corinthians because Independente del Valle gives Brazilian teams a hard time. Beat São Paulo in the Sudamericana final, beat Flamengo now in the Recopa Sudamericana. So Corinthians are going to have an easy time. Argentino Juniors is still an Argentinian team, can give a hard time. And Liverpool from Uruguay, Corinthians have to beat them. At home is an obligation. On the road, at least get a tie. But I think Corinthians might advance in second. Group F, Boca Juniors from Argentina, Colo Colo, Chile, Monagas, and Deportivo Pereira. Boca is going to dominate. I think Colo Colo is going to get the second spot. Group G with two Brazilians, Atlético Paranaense and Atlético Mineiro, Libertad from Paraguay, Alianza Lima from Peru. I think both Brazilians should advance, but Libertad is going to give also a hard time. In Group H, no Brazilians, just Olimpia from Paraguay, Atlético Nacional from Colombia, Melgar from Peru, and Patronato from Uruguay. I think that's the weakest group by far, but I think Olimpia and Atlético Nacional are going to make it. So that's the group stage of Libertadores. I'm going to go really, really, really quick on the Sudamericana ones, just maybe the teams from here, Sao Paulo. São Paulo has Tolima from Colombia, which is a team that give Corinthians hard time twice. Tigre from Argentina, which is funny. That's the team that São Paulo played in the Sudamericana final in 2012, and that game never fully ended. They went to it was a halftime. They had an altercation on the field during the halftime stop, and then Tigre never came back to the field. São Paulo was declared the champions, but many São Paulo supporters believe that after the game never ending, the curse started because it's been 11 years since that game, and São Paulo only won one state championship. So São Paulo fans believe that when they play Tigre at Morumbi and the game is over, they believe that's gonna end the bad luck.
Wow, I guess it makes sense. That's literally what we would call a Mickey Mouse Championship, and maybe getting to play Tigre, maybe that will help change that mojo. I think what's interesting to me is RB Bragantino over in Group C. Um, I think obviously to me they suffer kind of an embarrassment there in the semis of the Paulista.
Yeah,
And as you said, they got to prove it, right? You got that Red Bull funding. There's no excuse for them to not be losing games like that.
and
Um,
I mean, Sul-Americana is a kind of tournament for Bragantinos and Botafogos and Goiás and Fortaleza and America Mineiro, teams that don't have international like track record, teams that never won an international tournament. Like with all the respect, like Santos, São Paulo, they're teams that won three times Libertadores. Even though they do well and might win it, want to win it, that title is not going to be as value as for it for Bragantino or Goiás or Fortaleza or América Mineiro. They never came close to win it, or even Botafogo never came close to win an international title. So,
yeah,
but Bragan,
and this is like the Europa League where the winner of
yeah,
this tournament gets to play in uh, the Libertadores next year.
yeah, and the Recup as well. But yeah, it's also like a faster way to go to Libertadores. Not really, but yeah, it's interesting. I'll say this though. I think all Brazilian teams should advance. I think the team that has the trickiest group is Botafogo with LEDU, Magallanes e Universidade Cesar Vallejo, and also because Botafogo right now they're doing not doing well. They did not make it to the semifinals in the Rio State Championship like Santos. Santos and Botafogo are the teams in the top eight, the top 12 that are struggling the most in the start of the season. They did not make the playoffs in their state championships, so they at least got to make it to the playoffs in the Sudamericana.
That's something interesting. I noticed Gariani up there in that Group B. That's another team, Brazilian team. I don't really recognize any of those other teams though in Group B.
Yeah, Sudamericana is not even like, for example, I don't know Puerto Cabello, I don't know Universidad Serra Vallejo, I don't know Estudiantes. I think it's Merida or something. Like some of the teams I kind of remember that playing Brazilians other times, but some of the times um I it's the kind of the league. There's a criticism that a lot of pundits says about CONMEBOL. It's like you expand too much tournaments, you ended up getting teams that are not as good as or not as like recognizable, and it kind of makes the league not as interesting as it was in the past.
Well, I mean, you could say that, but at the same time, we just had Violet from Haiti upset FC Austin.
Yeah,
So you never know these teams out of nowhere that even if they don't get even if they can't play in their home country because of war and cartels and stuff, they can win it all.
that's true. And just to finalize, so finally this weekend we're gonna have the finals in Rio and Sao Paulo. Agua Santa is gonna host the first leg against Palmeiras, but the game's not gonna be in Diadema. It's gonna be in Barueri because of the Agua Santa Stadium not meeting the capacity necessary to host the final. I think the thing is, Agua Santa is the underdog. They have nothing to lose. They made like the fans are already happy, win or lose. All the responsibility, all the pressures on Palmeiras to win back to back, and Palmeiras are gonna have to go to Bolivia next Wednesday to play Bolivar in the Libertadores. So between the first and second leg, they're gonna have to go to Bolivia playing the altitude. So I think if they don't win it, like for say 1-0 tie or even lose it, I think the second leg is gonna be harder because of all the kind of the fatigue they're gonna have playing in the altitude on Wednesday.
That's certainly true. And plus, it's just how much of their resources are going to be focused on winning this tournament comparatively. Because you said, this state tournament has dwindled in importance to those top tier teams because they're focused on Libertadores, focused on winning on an international stage. It's going to be interesting. I agree with you. I think Palmeiras is going to win. But Agua Santa clearly should give them a run for their money throughout these two legs.
Yeah, I think if it was a one leg match, I would have bet on Agua Santa, but it's a two legs. It's two legs. It's two games. It's hard. Like last year, for example, Palmeiras played terribly against São Paulo in the first leg, lost 3-1. They come out in the second leg 4-0. So it's really hard for Palmeiras playing back to back games that are bad. That's they do. That's why I think Palmeiras is gonna win it because I don't see it Palmeiras playing two games badly.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like to me this first match is going to be critical for Agua Santa. They either got to win or keep it really close, like lose by
Yeah.
a goal or two, and then catch
No,
them off the bye week.
if they lose by two, I think it's done. If they lose by one, I can see it. They got at least tie. They got at least tie to come to the second match at least with the like, hey, we're still in even here. If they lose by two, it's done. It's done. I don't see it Palmeiras losing 2-0 at home. I don't see it. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly going to be um, a massive deal. And if they tie after two legs, is it straight to penalties?
Penalties, straight to penalties, and it will be the third penalty kicks matchup Agua Santa will have in this playoff. They beat São Paulo and Bragantino in penalty kicks.
Yeah, I mean, It just seems like they are the Cinderella kids that the slipper will not strike midnight for them.
And
But
it'll be
I do like
historical.
Palmeiras.
If Água Santa wins the Paulistão, it will be the first ever professional title because they won a lot of titles when they were the amateur era. But in the professional era, they were in the runner ups in the fourth division, the state of Sao Paulo, third place in the third division, I think fourth place and second place in the second division, but never won a title when they got promotions. So imagine winning their first title in the pro era and the most important one ever.
Yeah, I mean, just what an accomplishment! I gotta imagine the parades that would be thrown
Oh,
in Agua Santa.
Diadema is gonna be like, I cannot even imagine Diadema. Like, Diadema is a city that is like Newark. It's a city that is really near São Paulo, that is dealing has a lot of issues with housing and infrastructure. Has a lot of kind of underdeveloped areas, like areas that are kind of kind of rough. In the 90s, it used to be the most one of the most dangerous cities in the world with all the drug and violence. They got better over the years, but still, though, Diadema. Oh my God, I cannot even imagine what's gonna happen. Like, I'm gonna be so happy for one person, Paulo Leite. He saw the city of Diadema born, being founded. He saw Agua Santa being born. So he will be historical, like mostly for him because if there's one person who really knows Diadema and Diadema soccer is Paulo Leite.
Is there a person in Brazilian media that's like Tom Rinaldi? That like could do really emotional sports stories? Because I would love to see
Mm,
a emotional sports story what Agua Santa means to Diadema.
I it's hard. I would say though, it probably would be there's one or two guys on TV that can do a good job like that. Not as good as Tom Ronaldo, but it's because Paulo Leite, he'll definitely be on the story. Like, imagine he was a black, he was African Brazilian kind of journalist, and not as like not by degree, but because he knows how to tell stories and broadcast and be a commentator. And he also was like an emancipator. I don't know if I'm saying correct. Like, he was one of the people that that founded the city of Diadema in the 50s. He was one of the people that founded the soccer league of Diadema that inspired the birth of Agua Santa.
Wow, I mean, literally the founding father. I mean,
Yeah,
that's just hard to think about because and then the U.S. like our founding fathers lived 200 years ago, and like literally their founding father is still there and gets to watch the home team play
Yeah,
it for it all.
I get emotional when I say this because I had the privilege to work alongside him for 2 years in my career back in 2013, 2014. And he inspired me so much to be the journalist I am today, to go deep and make connections, and be kind of like like he's so inspiring. Like, I say though, like, I'm so happy for him that Aguasana made that run. And I cannot even imagine what his reaction is gonna be this weekend. He was calling me already, saying that he wanted to go, but he's a kind of stage of, like, unfortunately, that his health is not as good as he was like 10 years ago. So I don't know if he's gonna make it to the game, but I sure hope that Agua Santa make him proud.
Absolutely, man. I'll be rooting for them distantly, and I hope I get to find a bootleg stream or something. Maybe that one random channel I have on YouTube TV will have it.
I'm sad that I'm really sad that I don't understand why the YouTube channel of Paulistão does not allow to be watched internationally. Because here in Brazil, YouTube is like, they own the rights to broadcast the game, like YouTube channel of the Paulistão. But I don't understand why they geo block it in America. Like,
I
I
mean, it's
truly don't.
weird because like who else is fighting for the broadcast rights in America?
Yeah, it's unfortunately it's the kind of thing that I
And it seems like that would only help out with ratings.
yeah, definitely. There would be people all over the world watching this game, and unfortunately, some people does not have the vision for getting the product better. As like we talked with Jason last week. And to finalize it, Rio State Championship final also this weekend, Flamengo Fluminense. I'm interested because it's going to be Vitor Pereira versus Fernando Diniz, the Portuguese coach that must win or he's fired against the Brazilian coach that is beloved by the media, is an intense coach that can make this team play well and really inspiring. But I know, but can he get the title? Because as much the media loved him and as much he's a great coach, he never got a great title of it. He never won a title in Fluminense in the first time he coached there, in Atlético Paranaense, in Sao Paulo, in Santos. His biggest title is the Paulista Cup, is the tournament here in the state of São Paulo in the second semester with Paulista of Jundiaí. That's the biggest title. So Fernando Diniz needs to win a title like that to legitimize him being the next kind of big Brazilian coach, because the media loves him. The media really wanted him to be the next Tite, the next Brazilian national team head coach, but he doesn't have the the, the kind of the winning record, the good record, like the title record to be a Brazilian national coach.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you look at media relations with coaches like that. I know this isn't in America or Brazil, but did you see Antonio Conte with Tottenham and how
I
he
was
got
not
himself fired?
Yeah, I'm not surprised he was fired because he's such a poisonous coach. Like he's a great coach, but I think he sometimes do kind of he has a relationship that is so toxic that even though he does good, performance and even have he's on the fourth place in the Premier League, he get people like tired of him.
Yeah, I mean, I just the press comments were like he was like everyone else sucks, all this player sucks. Like it was one of the craziest press conferences I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I mean, it's just anyway. Um, but back on this though, um, I would imagine Flamingo will win. I mean, there's no way Victor Pereira can lose 5 championships in the span of 4 months, right? There's no way.
Yeah. Oh my God! If you think about it, yeah, Brazilian Super Cup, the FIFA Club World Cup, the Recopa Sul-Americana, that we call the Guanabara Trophy, which was the regular season kind of trophy in the Rio State Championship, and now the title game. It'll be 5 trophies that he did not win at Flamengo. Like if Flamengo loses this final and he's not fired, it's a miracle. It'll be the first of a kind.
Yeah, he literally has lost everything, and I know you need him to hang on to come back to Corinthians. So I'm rooting
I
for
need that
Flamingo
game. I
just
need
so
that
we
game to
get
happen.
that.
I
So
need that.
hopefully Flamingo can finally get one done.
Yeah, and now Flamengo's going to be rested. That's going to be the good part of it. One thing that this kind of international, like international date, kind of make it was like the teams are going to be rested, so it's going to be a good matchup to see. And quick note, I've been also covering a lot of the second division in the Paulistão. We had a great matchup between like a derby between Campinas and Piracicaba, Ponte Preta, 15 Piracicaba and Ponte Preta. They like kind of like a rivalry here because the cities are so close. Like American is literally in the middle between Campinas and Piracicaba. So I kind of got to be a witness of this rivalry, but not with any emotional connection to it. It was a great matchup. Ponte Preta dominated 3-0. If they tie or even lose by 2 goals, they're gonna be promoted back to the first division. And it's the magic of it. It's like, there's a player called Je. Like 2 years ago, he was playing in amateur games and being a delivery boy, and now he's the top player in Ponte Preta. So that's the beauty of sports.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like Kurt Warner going from being a grocery bagger to an NFL quarterback in like 3 years. So,
And I just hope he because he's very temperamental. Like he got a red card on the quarterfinals because he kicked a player's dick. Uh, Literally, he kicked the nuts of a
oh,
player.
absolutely.
So he should be more kind of mindful and not and less temperamental.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, that's a great story. Hopefully, his rise continues for Jay.
Yeah. The only sad thing is that he loves to play good against Rio Branco. Last year, he scored, I believe it was like 4 goals against Rio Branco in 2 games. So I don't have good memories of him, but it's a kind of good story that kind of inspires me in soccer.
Yeah.
That's it for tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening to or watching episode 70. 70. We got 30 more till 100. This was recorded on March 28th, 2023. When we come back next week, would be no April Fools because it'll be episode 71. We'll react to the both Final Fours, to the latest in NFL draft and free agency, and the MLB Open a week, all of the state championships down in Brazil, and so much more. Stay tuned for the best podcast that covers both American and Brazilian sports. For Gus Tomazeli down in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, I'm Nick Gill in Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States. And you have been listening to Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports.
Music keep it funky fresh, y'all. And we won't stop until we get y'all. Till we get